Exposure tools for videos such as Histogram, Waveforms, Zebra and false colors are important for making a great video. Some modern cameras and professional monitors have tools to help you to get the right exposure. And in today's video we will take a look at these 4 tools and learn how they can help you to avoid a bad lighting in your videos. Nowadays cameras can capture video in flexible formats that allow for a lot of tweaking in post-production. However, if highlights or shadows are clipped during filming, this information is lost and cannot be recovered. This means that even well-framed and colored footage can be unusable. So at the beginning you really might rely on an in-camera exposure meter. But look how it changed if we simply switch from a dark to a bright background. To compensate we have to adjust the settings, but it also affects the subject in a frame. And there is another problem when we shoot on a bright sunny day. So let's start with the first tool, and it's histogram. Histograms have become a nearly universal feature for video and still cameras. Histograms usually people's first choice for helping with exposures, and sometimes it's the only one available in camera. So today, to show you all 4 tools, I will use the monitor from my previous video, the FeelWorld F5 Pro X monitor. And if you're really serious about your future filmmaking, so on-camera monitor is probably the first tool I would recommend you to get. So histogram is a graph that shows the distribution of luminance in the image, basically showing how many pixels are underexposed, how many of them overexposed, and where the rest of them lands on the scale from 0, which is pure black, to 100, which is pure white. The x-axis is your exposure or IRE levels, while the y-axis is how many pixels sits on that level. The histogram is a great tool for overall judgments, but sometimes it's not specific enough, especially if you want some of your shots to be darker or some of your shots to be lighter, or when we have a really bright light source like sun or maybe some light bulbs in frame. The histogram changes in real time as you move your camera or you change your settings. The goal here is to have most pixels in the middle of the graph with fewer pixels on the sides. This helps to avoid completely black clipped shadows or completely white clipped highlights areas in your image. Histogram problems usually appear when shooting outside. The sky appears very bright and lays on the right side of your histogram, while your subject is darker and appears on the left side of histogram. This can be a little confusing because you will have a huge peak on the right side and just a little blip on the left side, which is your subject. But we know that you should set your exposure based on your subject. But seeing this peak on the right can make you think that everything is too bright. And if you lower your exposure to fix that, the sky now looks fine, but your subject is too dark. But the opposite can happen inside, where dark backgrounds make you raise your exposure, but at the same time you're going to overexpose your subject. So always focus on the most important part of your image. See where it falls on histogram and adjust the exposure to get it right. If you can avoid clipping on the background by adding or reducing light, that's great, but the subject should be probably exposed first. Well, now let's talk about waveforms. A waveform monitor is similar to histogram, but it shows the exposure levels from left to right in the frame. For example, if you have bright window on the right side of the image, then right side of waveform will be high. And if you have dark shadows on the left side of the image, the left side of the waveform will be low. With waveform, you want to avoid anything hitting the bottom, which is 0 IRE, or the top, which is 100 IRE, to avoid clipping. It only shows image horizontally, but if you know exposure for a horizontal slice, you can guess what affecting the waveform. When reading a waveform, look how dense the waveform at different brightness levels. Brighter, more packed areas means more pixels at that level. Lighter, less dense parts means fewer pixels. Some monitors can create an RGB waveform parade, which break down 3 color values and show where each color in the exposure range. These are more complex but can be very useful. Next tool is zebra stripes. Zebra stripes are becoming a common feature on modern cameras. You might find them in your camera settings. On my monitor, zebra patterns are made to show overexposed areas. In my case, it's over 90%. And it's called overexposure. So everything in the frame with IRE value from 90 to 100% will have this zebra pattern. This is useful because it shows you exactly where the highlights are too bright. Many filmmakers set their zebra settings to 90 or 95% to avoid clipping in highlights. Some people set their zebra values to 60 or 70%, which is good for white people's skin. My camera has the ability to set up two different zebras at the same time, one for skin tones and another one for highlights. Zebra like histogram are very helpful but not perfect. Sometimes you might need to overexpose the image if you have a subject in your frame and you're shooting outside. And the last but maybe the most important tool is false color. False color is the most advanced of these 4 exposure tools and is commonly used in production and on camera monitors. It overlays your image with colors that show exact exposure level pixel by pixel. Instead of showing real colors, it uses a chart to assign different colors to different IRE values. Blues for low exposure, greens for mid-range, yellow and orange for high exposure, and also pink for underexposed or everything below 0, and red for everything that is overexposed or over 100 IRE. Turning on false colors adds this chart on your screen, allowing you to see the exposure levels for every part of your image. False color is especially useful for getting skin tones right. Most filmmakers aim for skin tones to be for around from 60 to 70 IRE. False color clearly shows which part of the image falls within that range, so you can adjust your exposure levels for better facial details. Even with these exposure tools, most of the work is up to you. For example, IRE levels for skin would vary, especially for people with white skin and black skin. Or if you're shooting log. For example, if you are shooting in Canon Select 3, instead of 70%, your skin level should be around 55%. So these tools are just graphs and markers that provide information, but it's your job as a filmmaker to understand this information and adjust your exposure accordingly. The key is to have this knowledge ready, especially when you encounter challenges like dark shadows or bright sunlight. So, which of these tools you find most helpful, and how do you ensure a good exposure in your video? Share your thoughts in a comment section below. And as always guys, I see you in the next one. Bye!